gas ourselves up, but we short on breath. Talking about we eating, but who we really cooking. Dreaming about greens, but ain't nobody looking. No land, no acres, no seeds in the ground. When the hunger hits, who's gonna be around? We starving every day, and it just ain't the food. Feeding the hood garbage, got 'em acting a fool. We flossing with rides, stunting with chains, but these bars we spitting just bring more pain. We guilty as hell, preaching all these lies, selling debt to the kids, and we acting surprised. We commercialize the pain, broadcast the grief, tell the youth to hustle, but hide the beef. We glorify the trap, invite them to the flames, just like Reagan brought the crack on planes. Back in the 80s when the streets got soaked, my people, my brothers, all got choked. Reagan said no trades, but we know the deal. He left us in the dirt, man, that shit was real. I was just a shorty watching it unfold, old enough to see how we got sold. War on drugs, but it was war on us. Cops on our necks, no love, no trust. They labeled us thugs, beast on the block, made us kiss the pavement while they cleaned our clock. Prison became business thanks to Reagan's game. Free labor's the truth in America's name. Slavery's dead, man. That's just a word. Read the 13th Amendment, it's still absurd. They lock us in cages, serving time for life. Double digits for wisdom, cutting sharp like a knife. I'm here to say, the chains in the air, it's time we break free, start showing we care. No more flexing for nothing, no more selling out. It's time to rise up.
Good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning. This morning, I was playing independent music before I started my podcast. Today I have something that I played before, but I feel like it means so much more today and just showing how much of a cold world that we live in. So here goes OG, Boo Dirty, Cold World, and I'll be right back right after this.
I stay solid, nigga. Y'all know that.
Carry stories that I never told.
Nigga, you know don't call shit to be real, though.
Loyalty cost me more than I knew.
I gave my life to you niggas.
Still stand tall, always stay true.
Real niggas don't die.
Nights got dark, but I never did fold.
Ain't never fold, nigga.
Build my name from the dirt and the low.
Y'all know I came from the mud with this shit, nigga.
Lost some friends when the pressure got real.
Some gang sons how they
Kept
got
my soul when they wanted that deal.
real rap, nigga.
Blood brothers, nothing come before the blood, brother. You know how many times I had to pay the plug for you? I crossed my heart and hope to die, take a slug for you. How you walk around with no love for me? See, this loyalty is a must, but it's love before all. Big Cobra, you the snakers of them all. They threw so many shots at me, I took them all. You know I'm solid as a rock, this pyramid will never fall. I got so many secrets I'd rather take to my grave. I'm so real, these niggas make up shit to put on my name. I shedded tears with you niggas, hopped out and killed with you niggas. Hard times when y'all were broke, I paid bills for you niggas. I lost friend, pressure came, them niggas start hating. Just talking about a nigga, bringing up my name like I'm safe. You ever been bagged in the corner and had to fight your way out? With no family or no friends, just a chop on the couch. Real rap, nigga.
I stay solid, nigga. Y'all know that.
Carry stories that I never told.
I'ma take this shit to the grave. I went there and bring this shit.
Loyalty cost me more than I knew.
I mean, I wish I never met you niggas.
Still stand tall, always stay true.
Big dude, double O, forever, nigga.
Bro, you remember we pulled up on the what's the name? You was hanging out the window with that what's the name? Then you took the buddy chain. It's a cold game, and you a cold man. Damn, I miss you, nigga. Shit ain't the same. Looking at pictures in your cell, I'm looking at pictures on my wall. Praying to God he give us one more chance to ball. My brother fighting a Rico, my son just lost in trial, first degree. And they both was into it before they left the streets. I tried to tell my brother, but he wouldn't listen. Cause my son was hanging with some niggas that he wanted missing. These streets wicked, put me in a cold position. I got out the way when I realized that I couldn't fix it.
Stay solid when the world turned cold.
I stay solid, nigga. Y'all
Um, like I said, good morning, good morning, good morning. And this is going to be an in-depth episode, and I'm going to talk about fraud. I'm going to talk about these bodies that they're finding all over Minneapolis and the Twin Cities. I'm going to talk about political games because there's a lot that people feel like they're in the right when they're actually in the wrong. And that's what I want to talk about, right? I don't want to talk about politics because to break it down, Democrats and Republicans, there's no difference. I'm going to say that again. Republicans and Democrats, there's no difference. And the first thing that I wanted to start with is fraud. They said that they got plans, both governor candidates. And yes, I'm still on the Lindell Phil Parrish, hoping that something does happen. But if it doesn't, it doesn't. But I damn sure will not be really voting for either of the major two parties in Minnesota for governor, because that's not how change is going to come. We're not going to get change by some people that have already been in government for so many years and we haven't seen it. So all these, that's what I really want to get into, kick it off this morning. So you're going to hear about Amy and Lisa Demuth anti-fraud policies, and it's explained by Jana Schultor from Carrie Levin and somebody else he has on there.
About punishing fraud, et cetera, et cetera. The reason we're talking about
Start over.
Welcome to Breaking the News Plus. I'm Jana Shortle. We are going to talk about fraud tonight and kind of the future of how the state goes about prosecuting fraud, goes about punishing fraud, et cetera, et cetera. The reason we're talking about the future is because come November, you're going to pick a new governor, and that new governor will inherit the fraud scandals. And to talk about that, Danny Spiewak tonight, the two candidates that we have up for governor, Lisa Demuth and Amy Klobuchar. Both of them are coming out now with their plans to fight fraud in Minnesota.
Yeah, fraud has to be right at the top. One of the top, if not the top issues in the 2026 election for governor. It's you're right. You're coming off of 8 years of the Walz administration. The main reason he didn't run for a third term was because of attention around fraud. Mm-hmm. So now to win the election, the next person has to convince the voters that they're the one that can fix it. And they both said they're going to be the ones. And so it's just going to be up to the voters to decide who they really think will fix the problem. And
before we get to each of the women's plans about fraud or how they're going to tackle fraud from day one, whichever wins the office, I think it's important for listeners and viewers of this conversation to know that just because the Walz administration is the one where the state woke up to fraud and perhaps they had something to do with that in terms of it was easier to commit, that's for courts, juries to decide. It doesn't leave with the Walz administration. And I bring that up because I remember prosecutors in this case, from Andy Lugar to Joe Thompson, talking about we will be seeing the effects of this fraud for years and years and years, right?
Yes. And just as the court cases play out, there's some new nugget related to fraud every day. And mm-hmm. So it's just, I think people for outside of Minnesota, it all began with, the December and the Nick Shirley video and everything. But I think for those of us in Minnesota, especially people that have been covering the fraud of every news station and newspaper and a media outlet in town, mm-hmm. It's just been this slow trickle for the last really 4 or 5 years.
Right.
That is going to just continue for the next several years, I assume.
That's a good point for people that are outside of Minnesota watching Nick Shirley's video that caused sort of national outrage. None of it was discovering new fraud because our reporters and reporters all over town and this state have been covering the fraud, beginning with Feeding Our Future as the biggest cases. And that was prosecuted by Andy Lugar, who's now 2 U.S. attorneys gone now. That started in the spring of 2021.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And actually Lugar now endorsing Klobuchar for governor. And that's kind of one of the key arguments that Senator Klobuchar is making on her side, that she helped support his confirmation under President Biden, that she was the one that called the Department of Justice to add more prosecutors to his office. I
will say this, right? Amy Klobuchar is just as dirty as Andy Lugar, right? Andy Lugar is dirty. If you look at his wife, and then you go look at Frey's wife, who our buddy. Come on, man. It's like they always say that there's investigating, but you never want it. The truth never comes out. And that's crazy to me, is like Nobody ever talked about Day Jones and how Andy Luger brought them into the city of Minneapolis. Like, come on, man, we're not dumb. Stop treating us like we're stupid when we're really not, because there's people out here that really research and are trying to educate. And I'll tell you like this, it seems like our media is trying to dumb down our communities. I'm going to be honest, because they never give us the truth, or they give us a half of a story. They don't never give it the whole story. When we talk about fraud, right? The minute you bring up Andy Luger and not talk about his wife and the connections that she had, y'all, it just shows that you call yourself journalists, but you're not really journalists, because you only tell half of the story. You never tell the full part of it. So it's like, why do we keep on falling for this, Minnesota? I'm going to be honest. Why? We act like Demuth is going to do anything. We act like Amy Klobuchar is going to do anything, because when it came time to do something, they have folded and bended. So that's what I don't understand. We act like something is really going to change. And how? Demuth has been in the legislature since 2018. And the speaker. She's now the speaker. And Klobuchar been in the U.S. Senate since 2007. And before that, she was the Hennepin County prosecutor. Like, come on, man. We always talk about we want change. But how are we going to get change if we keep on going the same way? Isn't that what the definition of crazy is? Over and over, doing something over and over again and expecting a different result? Because we don't ever get one. We put our faith into these political parties that don't even understand what's going on in the streets, because they don't live that life. You know what's crazy to me, right, is I see people talk about Bobby Champion, and I see people talk about Cedric Frazier and Keith Ellison, and okay, what have they actually done? Because there's been more stories that can connect them to fraud than what people are, even what the news media is talking about. We can even go to St. Paul, and we can sit here and talk about feeding our future, but let's go further. Let's talk about Twin Cities Refuge and how they had all kind of connections, both in Minneapolis and St. Paul. Let's talk about how this shit was going to St. Cloud, Rochester, Duluth, Jackson, Blue Earth, Mankato. See, y'all don't want to talk about that. And that is the problem. Because there is no, I'm going to tell you like this, right? I don't give a fuck if Amy Klobuchar come up here and talk about fraud. I don't care if Lisa Demuth, because your actions, your past actions, your past legislation didn't show that you cared about fraud. And I like Ryan Wilson. I think he's a great guy. But they're not the right people. Because I'm going to tell you right now, Lisa and them are all about their establishment. Their establishment. Look at how fucked up in the GOP of how their endorsed candidate did shitty on primary. So that just shows you that Minnesota wants something different. And we got, I'm not going to say there was election fraud, but there was definitely a lot of things wrong with our election. Right? The same thing when it came down to endorsing a candidate. It was still shitty. And now our election system was even shittier. And we believed them. They told us for so long there was no fraud. They still tell us there's no fraud. Bobby Champion's still going to fucking news and lie his ass off. I don't know how that nigga nose ain't getting bigger. I don't know how that nigga nose ain't getting bigger. The same thing with Jerry fucking McAfee, Lisa Clemens. How do y'all expect different if you keep on going in the same direction? That's crazy. That's the definition of insane. Doing something over and over again and expecting a different result. How is that not insane? This is what I say to the black community and the black churches and the black nonprofits. Camo J, they steer you motherfuckers into that you think that you're getting better, but you're only getting fucked. You're only getting fucked. And they can't even see it because they're not going to bite the hand that feeds them. That's way more important to them than anything else is them getting money. It ain't about change. It ain't about changing shit. Only thing that they want to change is the numbers in their bank account.
For feeding our future. And so that's becoming a key component of the race. And then, for Speaker Demuth, a lot of what she said is she's the top Republican in the state government. She wielded so much influence over the last 2 years and was one of the reasons there was the bipartisan legislation around the inspector general and other initiatives that happened at the Capitol.
Yeah, let's kind of go tit for tat here so we don't have to pick one person's plan over the other person's plan to go first because everything's partisan these days. We don't want to play favorites. Let's start with Speaker Demuth, the highest ranking Republican figure in the state. You mentioned, her role as speaker over the last divisive legislative term. She handled that quite well. She talked about fraud quite a bit. And one of the first things she did was her real backing of that office of inspector general. And she laid that out again today as evidence as to why she could be the best person to vote for that would really crack down on fraud. Also noting, obviously, that she is in the party that is not the Democratic Party that was in control when this fraud really took a grip. So the OIG, how big is that?
That's a big deal. It's probably the main piece of legislation that passed in the 2026 legislative session. The House Republicans certainly under Speaker Demuth certainly were the ones in many ways that pushed for it. But they had to get bipartisan support. Mm-hmm. The Senate DFL was also very active in this. So I think to be very clear, it was a very bipartisan effort. Right. The Senate DFL and the Senate Republicans passed it very easily last year. It got tied up when there were disagreements between the House Republicans and House DFL. But then eventually this year they came to an agreement. So that's a big deal, but everyone's going to try to take credit for it. Governor Walz signed it. House DFL was huge in negotiating it. They had a lead author that worked across the aisle with Republicans. Speaker Demuth will obviously deserves some credit for it. It was her caucus that helped, play half of the.
Okay, I'm going to say it again. They don't give out the whole story. They only give out parts of it. Why does nobody talk about how Republicans even came up with a fraud committee? That was Minneapolis citizens. I brought that idea to Republicans all the way in 2022. In 2022, I didn't talk about Somalis. Everything that we talked about in that hour meeting at the state capitol was about Black nonprofits, Black churches, and how these Minneapolis, St. Paul, McKnight, all these foundations are scammers. Put out the DBAs, showed all the little bullshit that they're doing. And the crazy thing for me is the reason I even found the idea was researching Minnesota. I found and Robert helped me. We found I think it was from like 1992, or maybe even later than that. But there was video of a meeting, a committee meeting at the Washington, D.C., and Paul Wellstone was one of them. But I seen Sharif Willis was a part of that. Rest in peace. I got my own issues, but I'm still going to give the man respect. So rest in peace. Because it's just not personal. You know what I'm saying? And even though, like, when I was growing up, that was gangs. I'll be honest, that was gangs. Do I have some of my own feelings about some of the people in Minneapolis? That's personal. A lot of that shit was when I was in gangs. And I tried to move that shit aside and be the bigger man. But you can't always just be the bigger man. And because at some point people are going to call you a bitch, going to call you a pussy, going to call you're weak. And instead you're just being the bigger man. You're being the bigger man. So it just be crazy to me. Hold on, I need to fix this. I don't know what that. All right, there it goes. Yeah, it just seems like, when are we going to get change? Even when it comes to the fraud. Lisa Demuth didn't have that idea. That idea wasn't even brought to Republicans weren't even thinking about that shit. Weren't even thinking about fraud. Because I'll tell you like this, before a lot of this shit was even going on, before you ever had the fraud committee in 2025, why don't we talk about those previous years of how the fraud? Because I'll tell you like this, the media puts out stories, $1.1 billion given in 2023. And I think it was like almost 900 million in this last year in omnibus bills. Nobody ever looks at that shit. Nobody don't. You know what's crazy is, I'm not saying that all Republicans don't, but there's probably some that don't. And there's probably some that do. But you can't expect anybody to read 1,400 pages in under 24 hours or even 24 hours to be able to understand all the shit that's going on. Because I can tell you right now, that's how shit was getting in there. That was part of the reason, is that we put all this big ass shit in front of people and then expect, when half the time they don't even read the shit and don't even understand what they're voting for. So that is part of the reason that you're seeing shit now, because they weren't alerting citizens. They weren't on the ground watching this shit. Because I can talk about feeding our future. When Empress came over North Minneapolis, when we were doing an event on 36th and Penn, and left a U-Haul full of food. So I asked questions. Said he got paid $100,000 to me and Marcus, that he got paid $100,000 to come drop this van off and to give out this truck full of food. $100,000. I didn't see it at the time, but I'm definitely glad that I didn't go in that direction. Because there was many of times that people always, Julie Wickland, Propel, nonprofit, like, it's all, even Bobby Joe Champion be talking out of his ass. He says one thing and does another. And then the whole crazy thing, when it even came down to, because me and Marcus were trying to do it the right way. And what I mean by the right way is the grants, doing the nonprofit, all that shit, right? But every time we would always get left out. We'd always get left out. But we would see our ideas being used, but we were getting left out. Same thing when it came to Minnesota Safe Streets. That was Marcus's original idea, and Jerry McAfee and them took it. They took it. Same way the motherfuckers took our stats in 2021 when Black Lives the Streets was over on 36th and Penn. And we did demon time hours. We weren't out there during the day. I mean, if we woke up early and came out there, yeah, we were. But most times we were out there when it was dark, when it was nighttime. You know, we're seeing the violence interrupters out at that time. But yet, $3 million, Lisa Clemens. $3 million, Jerry McAfee. $3 million, 21 Days of Peace. $3 million, stuttering ass L. Flowers. We push for peace. 8218 Truth Center. You guys don't do your own digging. You just expect the news to give you everything, and that's okay. Like they're giving us the truth. How long has America been lying to the people? How long has our government been lying to the people? That's the conversation y'all don't want to have. That's a real conversation that y'all don't want to have. Because all this shit isn't new. It's been around. The problem is a lot of people weren't watching, or they weren't reading. They were just skimming and not getting the full picture. They were only getting half. And I do feel like that's part of the problem. We have a low IQ voter community in Minnesota. I don't know what else to call it.
Role in the Tide House. The Senate deserves credit. So it's just kind of like everyone can take credit for it, but it was a big piece of legislation.
As Oprah would say, everyone gets a car. You get a car.
Right,
You
yeah,
all
right,
pass
yeah.
this legislation. Okay. Speaker Demuth also talks about in the first 90 days, if she were elected, here's what she would do to stop fraud. She would crack down on transfers to foreign countries for people on welfare programs in the state of Minnesota. She would fire all existing commissioners and deputy commissioners and replace them with experts in their respective fields that are committed to ending fraud. She would start a fraud oversight committee led by her lieutenant governor. And she also ensured, she said at the end of her message today, to the communities that rely on this funding, that actually need that Medicaid funding, that she's not forgotten about them and she will ensure they get that money. Anytime you come up with a plan, and we'll get to Klobuchar's as well, everything looks great on paper. This is all going to work great. So when you look at Speaker Demuth's plan, what do you see as the highlights and maybe that's not that big of a deal?
The highlights to me were some of the new initiatives that were being proposed. One was creating an executive task force led by the lieutenant governor on fraud. That would be new. Demuth was the one that created the fraud oversight committee in the House, but this would be an executive thing. So that stood out to me as a new proposal. There was the pledge to what she was saying, unfreeze the federal funding related to DHS and providers that have lost their funding because of all these fraud issues. It's a very complicated subject for another day. But it appeared that she was blaming DHS for just sort of unilaterally shutting off funding and doing these prepayment reviews and a lot of these providers losing their validation to treat people with disabilities and other vulnerable people. So it appeared that she was saying that she was going to be sort of like unfreezing some of that so that the providers that are legitimate can get their money and then the fraudsters can, be more scrutinized.
Wasn't that freeze because of the federal government freezing it and that we had to meet Minnesota being Minnesota had to kind of meet their smell test to have it be unfrozen? Yeah.
My understanding was that DHS had to revalidate all these providers because of the threat of the federal funding freeze. Okay. And so now we're really off the rails, but all the freeze but yeah, it appeared that she, because of the threat from the federal government, the state unvalidated or disenrolled a bunch of providers. And I think she's saying that basically, to put it in a nutshell, that she believes DHS acted just too broadly, that the providers that are providing services to people with disabilities that are not fraudulent should have an easier time getting their money as opposed to being kind of like.
But what's crazy is, how are we supposed to know? Because I can tell you right now is that there's a Anoka County, she was a county prosecutor that was in sex trafficking and then also in Medicaid fraud. So it's like, how are we supposed to trust the people that are holding people accountable, and when they won't even hold themselves accountable? Like, let's make it make sense, because what's going on in Minnesota right now doesn't make sense. And to be honest, I don't even think Lisa Demuth, because I can tell you right now, right, even if she did win governor, right, I can tell you right now that most likely the Democrats are going to have the Senate and the House. That's just being realistic. Looking at looking at the primary voting numbers, right? I think that's the way it's going to go. You're going to see, I don't think it'll be close. I think it'll be like 3 or 4 seats each. But that is their own faults. And a lot of that shit is because a lot of these people can't keep their mouths closed. They can't keep their mouths closed. And it's the same thing with, even like, I get it. And I'm going to go into it later, but it's like, we're not hearing nothing about fraud, because besides providers being arrested and the little convictions that they have totally done, that doesn't account for the billions taken in fraud. Now, let's be honest. It doesn't account for the billions taken in fraud. So,
like, cooped up and swept up with all the fraudsters.
That makes sense. We covered stories on that, on all of the people left behind that did nothing wrong, that were losing the services that allowed them to live lives with dignity. So she was basically saying she's going to undo that hot mess. That won't happen on her watch. Okay, let's move to Amy Klobuchar, who's running on the Democratic side. The interesting thing about Senator Klobuchar, when you're talking about fraud, is it can't really pin fraud directly to her, what may happen in the Senate race with Lieutenant Governor Flatting.
Oh my God, I can't even do them sometimes, because it's like, we'll just throw them a bone, even though we know they've done wrong. Yeah, this should just be wild to me. I'm gonna switch over to 3 bodies in 3 days, right? So this morning, it's actually been 4. And I did see other numbers on Facebook. I haven't really been looking into it like that because I only saw it this morning. But from my understanding, there's a whole lot of bodies. There's 6 because one was just found this morning in Minneapolis, and nothing's being identified, or we're not really being told much other than that they're finding bodies. They're not giving us many details. They're not giving us many. There's not much transparency. I'll say that, because when you do tell the community maybe a little bit too much, that's when shit gets out of hand. But I do feel like that's what Minnesota needs, is to give this information out and let Minnesota constituents, Minnesota residents, decide for themselves.
At 8 o'clock, University of Minnesota police are working to figure out what happened to an adult whose body was found near the Stone Arch Bridge. A university spokesperson confirming that U of M police responded to a report of a body located in the area of 6th Street and Main Street Southeast. This was about 1 yesterday afternoon. At this point, we don't have any details as to who died or how. This is now the 3rd body found in Minneapolis in just 3 days. Police are still trying to figure out what led to a body being found in a wooded area near East River Flats Park. That was Saturday night. Then on Sunday morning, police recovered another body in the water on the east side of Demuth. You see all of this on the map here. So far, police have not said anything about evidence pointing that these 3 incidents are connected.
Well, this morning, the Dakota County Sheriff's Office is asking for your help as they investigate the death of a man after his body was found in the Mississippi River. 40-year-old Timothy Brian Standish Jr. was found near Inver Grove Heights on Friday, with the sheriff saying the death is considered, quote, very suspicious. Deputies are hoping to learn more about Standish's life just before he died and are asking people who may have known him to please contact police. Take a look at some other things happening today at 8:08 tonight in Edina. The City Council will consider proposed changes at city parks. This is in response to gunfire at Yancey Park last month. If adopted, the new rules would require permits for groups of 24 or more people, restrictions on groups of 10 or more at Arneson Acres. It would also allow police to close all or part of the park if they feel it is necessary for public safety. And a Lakeville man is set to be sentenced for his role in the Feeding Our Future fraud scheme. Abdi Nasir Abshir admitted to stealing millions of dollars through a fake child nutrition.
Yeah, that happened yesterday too. He was given 33 months. I would do 33 months if I stole $6.9 million myself. So, yeah, that's just crazy. Oh, that's just crazy, crazy, crazy. Bodies coming up. I wanted to show y'all. Let's see if I can find it. I think I saved it. Yeah, here it is. So 7:37, another dead person found on the riverbank near Hennepin Avenue. Fourth dead body found in a week. Yeah, that's crazy. They said they never figured out why that body was chopped up and head left on the park bench in North Minneapolis a couple years ago. Crime doesn't get solved, only paused. Man, it's kind of crazy. So, I don't know if it's a coincidence. I don't know if it's connected. But I would suspect that we literally in Minneapolis probably have a serial killer on our hands. And people should be concerned. I'm not trying to gaslight or make it unsafe, but 2 + 2 = 4. I'm not going to sit here and leave y'all telling y'all that not to protect yourselves, but to have situational awareness, to understand where you're at and to be on point at times. Because that is part of the problem, I feel like, is people just think they're safe anywhere. And actually they're really not, because violence can happen, and doesn't matter the city, doesn't matter the neighborhood, violence can happen. So I want to get into, this is something that a lot of people yeah. This is I'm gonna leave this one open for a can of worms. My whole thing about Chauvin is different than a lot of Republicans in Minnesota. Because I hear free Derek, and I do feel like your Republicans are not going to win Minnesota. I mean, there's just too much that I'll just say they don't know how to be quiet at times, and that is part of the problem. Is things that are going to affect Minnesota on a local level in politics need to understand that. Oh yeah, this shit bothers me because I want Republicans to even like. I don't even know if it's really about Republicans because I damn sure ain't no Republican. I'm not a Democrat. I just want change. I don't want it to be about politics. I want it to be about what's actually happening in the streets, in the communities. I'm tired of hearing people saying, "Oh, well, we need affordable housing," and then you look at it and it's really not affordable. And that housing isn't for the Walmart cashier or the Quick Trip clerk or any of that shit. Somebody that, because there's still jobs in southern Minnesota that are barely paying $14 an hour to grown ass adults, and we are expecting it. That shit's wild to me. I really don't understand it. But so I want to talk about Derek Chauvin, and this is one of the reasons that I feel like Republicans are going to lose Minnesota, and it's never about truth. It's like, when is the truth going to matter? Because too many let shit go over their head and don't even see the bigger picture. They can only see what's in front of them, and I think that's really the part of the problem. So listen to Liz Collin and Derek Chauvin's attorney.
The attorney for Derek Chauvin talks about new developments in the case and the bombshell grounds for dismissal against all of the officers involved in the so-called murder of George Floyd. Next. Attorney Greg Joseph joins us once again. Greg, thank you for being here.
Liz, it's my pleasure.
Now, earlier today, you filed another petition for your client, Derek Chauvin, and that petition states that Governor Walz, Attorney General Keith Ellison, and the Hennepin County Attorney's Office violated state law in filing charges against your client. I know there are a lot of details in all of this, 31 pages in all, but how big of a deal is this, Greg?
This is fundamental. This is something that is just an institution that stretches back a very, very long ways. And when I say long ways, I mean Vikings, which is fitting for this state. The grand jury is essential. It's fundamental. And this case was never submitted to a grand jury. And I want to be clear about something else. This is a violation of not only state laws. This is a state constitutional violation. This is a federal constitutional violation. And what was done here is shocking. It's inexcusable.
I run a podcast solo. No producer, no editor, no tech skills, just Riverside. I get high.
So
I'm going to talk about that part in a little bit. Because I asked these questions all the way back in 2020, right? Because especially after I was a part of Mayan Burrell and Marvin Haynes of getting free. Looked at Minneapolis history. I mean, I lived there and I knew a lot of the stories, knew a lot of the cases. And one of the things that really bothered me about all of this, right, is that Amy, when she was the Hennepin County prosecutor, she would always go to the grand jury. That didn't happen in this case. And there's other cases where officers have been charged and not go to a grand jury. So this isn't something that's new. From my understanding of trying to read Minnesota law, is that life or first degree murder need to go to the grand jury. Anything else doesn't. And I think that's where Walls and Ellison went around it. I don't even know if they went around it. I just think they knew it was easier because we already know how the grand jury is in Minnesota, and it never really brings charges. I don't know if that would have happened in this case. I don't know. But one of the things that I was told is that Mike Freeman was going for second and third. I don't think the third was added at that time. I think Ellison did that. But that he was charging him with, I think it was second degree murder and some, there was another charge, like civil rights or whatever. They didn't need to go to a grand jury because it's not premeditated, and an officer was not looking at life with that charge. So I don't know where, this lawyer is going with the whole thing. I just know that I think about two other people, Jonathan Pope and Zoya Code, when it comes to Derek Chauvin. Even if we don't even want to talk about the George Floyd part of it, let's talk about he shouldn't be freed. And that's the crazy part of, like, I'm not saying that maybe I am saying it or whatever, but wrong is wrong, right is right. And that man, I'll tell you like this, traumatized Black Americans, years and years of Minneapolis police abusing, traumatizing, wrongfully convicting. Like, at some point, somebody was going to have to be the fall guy. Somebody was going to have to be the fall guy. They tried to do it to Noor. I think he got out in like 3.5 years. They tried to do it to the officer that shot and killed Philando Castile. Even I already said Noor. That was Justine Dimond or whatever. So it's like there's been cases where they haven't gone to the grand jury. And you only need to go to the grand jury in Minnesota is for first degree murder or anything that's looking at life. Like, so kidnapping in the first degree. I think there's a couple more charges as well, but that's literally what it is. So anything that is not, if you're not looking at life or you're not looking at a sentence without no parole, they don't need to go to a grand jury. And I think that's the part that they're not telling Minnesotans, because this does get deeper. This gets a whole lot more deeper than what people are even looking at or even what people are thinking it's about, because it does go deep. I'm not saying that George Floyd didn't die of a fentanyl overdose. I'm not saying that he died by, Derek's knee in his back or anything like that, right? What I'm saying is that they took that opportunity to all the years that Minneapolis people have been abused and how Minneapolis police have been abusing their citizens. There was no other way that Derek Chauvin took a lot of the blame for all the things that have happened. He took a lot of blame for a responsibility. I won't even say that, but not even responsible. I guess whatever responsibility, because they always put it on the 4 officers. They always put it back on the 4 officers. To me, that's not justice. That's not accountability for all the wrongs that Minneapolis police officers have been doing for years. And I just think that Derek Chauvin, Lane, and Kewen were just the fall people. They were the test tube dummies. I mean, we can even go with the officer that killed a man, which was crazy, was Darnella Frazier's family that died being hit by police in a police chase. And I mean, there's just so much that goes to the shit. So, like, people can take what they want from it, but I can tell you like this is that when it comes to Derek Chauvin, people in Minneapolis have a different point of view on this. And I know you guys only want to talk about Derek Chauvin, but we have to talk about the whole police department because it wasn't just Derek. Katie Blackwell as well. She needs to be held accountable. Whatever, Madaro, whatever the fuck his name is, the old police chief before O'Hara, he needs to be held accountable. There's so many people that need to be held accountable that got on the stand and lied. And lied. You know, so I'm not saying that Derek Chauvin doesn't deserve a new trial or anything like that, because there's a lot of facts that never really came out. That and that's where I'm going to keep it at. Even though I know there's documentaries, there's books, there's a whole lot of shit out here, but I'll just tell you like this: if we had another trial and all the facts did come out on the case, because I mean, you got to put into play of how much fentanyl was found in his system. They never included that MRT was a part of MPD training. Blackwell lied because MRT has been done over and over again, even after George Floyd. So it's like, what's changed? What's changed? So I'm gonna leave it at that. I'm gonna listen to the rest of this with Liz Collins and I think his name is George Joseph or something.
This all happens in a very short amount of time after May 25th, 2020. So they failed to convene a grand jury in this case, violating your client's right to due process. I think a lot of people are going to wonder, though, how something as big as this went unnoticed for such a long time.
Well, obviously, I don't have to tell you that the circumstances were strange. There was an assignment of authority by Governor Walz, which itself was unlawful. But that's unusual in any case. So I think there were a lot of things going on. I think it was very easy to lose the forest for the trees because in a very short period of time, there were very fundamental and basic violations of due process. And those aren't necessarily things that defense attorneys normally look for in preparing a case like this. You take for granted that the charges are going to be brought lawfully and that the process will be adhered to. And this didn't happen. It's not something that you'd normally even look for in a case like this, because you don't see this conduct by state actors.
So you have to essentially go back to the very beginning of this case, follow it all the way from the beginning. What did you find? What's going through your mind, I guess, when you discover this flaw?
The only thing you have when you're a defense attorney, the only thing you have to build your case around, your defense around, is the criminal charges. So I want to emphasize how fundamental this is. If the charges themselves are illegal, as they were in this case, everything that follows from those charges is also illegal, including the trial, which was a fraud. So what went through my mind when I saw this is I was stunned. Obviously, we filed a petition last November and called out a lot of due process problems with the trial at that time. The district court didn't see fit to grant a hearing in that. That's currently at the Court of Appeals. But this is so basic. It's easy to miss how basic this is. And unfortunately, everyone did. Effectively, what happened is the charges that were filed by the Hennepin County Attorney's Office, which were also unlawful because there was no grand jury convened and probable cause was found by a Hennepin County District Court judge. And that wasn't enough. Those charges.
I want to talk about that part of it. So I saved some shit that I put up here yesterday. And I really do think people need to pay heed and pay attention to this. So does Minnesota law require a grand jury for public officers accused of misconduct? No. This is the central misunderstanding in the petition. The petition cites Minnesota statute 628.613, which says a grand jury must inquire into the willful and corrupt misconduct in any office of public officers. But this statute governs what a grand jury must investigate. If a grand jury is convened, it does not require prosecutors to convene a grand jury. It does not require indictment before charging a public officer. It does not invalidate complaints filed without a grand jury proceeding. This statute has existed for decades and has never imposed a mandatory indictment requirement for misconduct related charges. Because there's a lot of shit they only give you part of it. They only give you parts, right? So again, I was having a discussion with people yesterday about it. Minnesota law allows prosecutors to charge felonies by complaint, except for first-degree murder, which does require a grand jury. Chauvin was charged with second-degree murder, third-degree murder, and manslaughter, which don't require indictment. So the statute has been unchanged for decades, and it has never supported the argument Chauvin's lawyers are making. Somebody had put up that, let me go back to it. So this would only be true for common criminals and not law enforcement. Minnesota law does not create one set of charging rules for common criminals and a different, stricter set for law enforcement officers. The petitions claim that public officers must be indicted by a grand jury before they can be charged is not supported by any Minnesota statute, rule, or case law. This is a misunderstanding of 6.28 or 628.61 and Rule 18.01. It's like people have to look at it, and like I said, when I was talking about John Pope and Zoya Code, I just know that he has other victims in Minneapolis from using the same MRT move, and a 14-year-old John Pope and a black woman named Zoya Code. Yeah, the shit just be, they don't even get it. Nobody wants to read the laws. Nobody wants to look at the laws. And I think that is definitely a part of the problem. Because yesterday I did look up I'm gonna go back to the video, but to show this too, is that I looked at his whole 31 pages. I looked at it. And everything, I looked it up. And I'll tell you like this, it's not gonna get far in court. I think they're going about it in the wrong way. And he just has bad attorneys who feel like they're doing right when they're really not. They're giving Derek, I feel like, false hope instead of the truth, because they're getting paid. This is the one thing that I want people to understand. Money's a motherfucker. Money is a motherfucker, because none of these people have to be behind bars. They don't have to be behind a wall. That's Derek. So again, I'm going to say it. I feel like they're giving this man false hope, all because he's paying them. They're not giving him the truth. And they're trying to go around Minnesota law, which I would love to see them go around, because like I said, there's been plenty of times. 31 times Amy Klobuchar used a grand jury. 31 times during her time as Hennepin County prosecutor. The only one that has not been, and this is the crazy part, this ain't even Mary. This is Mike Freeman. He's the one that charged. He's the one that charged Freeman, which he's done it himself, and he's also gone to the grand jury. So I don't understand why these people are in such I'll just say it like this. They're giving Derek and his supporters false hope. They're giving false hope, hoping that something that you know how many times people have been sitting in Stillwater or Oak Park Heights? Come on. Marvin Haynes was behind bars and didn't do anything. Same thing with Mayan Burrell. And how many other cases that there's no DNA or physical evidence, but yet they're behind, locked up in prison. There's a lot of stories. Cornelius Jackson, James Rent. So come on, man. It's like a lot of this, it feels like it's only good for them, but not for the rest, when we already have had people trying to make these arguments. It's just y'all weren't paying attention. They weren't paying attention. And now y'all want to get in an uproar. It's the same thing when it comes down to, like, Minneapolis hasn't done inspections to MPH certified homes or apartment buildings. It's because we're not paying attention. Same thing when it comes to the Somalis and all these benefits that our state legislator is doing. It's because too many people were not paying attention. You didn't want to see it because you were too busy worried about your own life. And there's nothing wrong with that. But let's have a discussion on how so much shit was able to get passed and we were just over here just living in our regular lives, because a lot of this shit that people are complaining about has already been here for years. Even when it comes to the vouching law, that's 50 years old. There's a lot of shit that I feel like people weren't paying attention, and that's their own fault. Do your research. Go back and read. I love reading. I love reading. That's one thing that really I enjoy, and I've enjoyed that since I was a kid. I mean, I think the reason why I enjoy reading is because when I was locked up in juvie and you were in your cell, we didn't have TVs then. All you had is a radio and books. So that's what I read. I read. I didn't want to be mad at the world because, for what? I did it myself. Even though at that time I blamed a lot of other people, but I had to make the best out of my situation. So what I did is I read. And I got to read better. I got better educated. Read the Bible in the whole when I did wrong. So it's like I took advantage of my wrongdoings. Even though they were punishing me, I would punish myself. And I'm not saying punishment is a bad thing. Punishment is I was punish my brain because I would make it work. I wasn't going to let them overpower my thinking of that I was a piece of shit, or I wasn't, just because I was in Minnesota prison and not an OID number didn't make me any different than anybody who was in Minnesota. So if you don't know the history on Derek Chauvin, and even how Derek and George were employees. They worked on the same security teams. There was times where they worked the same shifts. So there was a connection there that they already knew each other. I don't know how well, might have just been passing, because I can tell you like this, when I was working, just because I knew they were a coworker doesn't mean that I knew them. So, and I'm just going to leave it at that.
Charges weren't severe enough for the people who burned down Minneapolis. So the governor stepped in and assigned responsibility to Attorney General Ellison. Now, there is a statute that gives him authority to do that, but he didn't follow the statute either. So what the statute requires, it may be actually a procedural rule. What the rule requires is that the conveyance of authority be done in writing. So that didn't happen. But the bigger point is that the conveyance of authority from the Hennepin County attorney at the direction of Governor Walz only applies in cases where an indictment by a grand jury is required. Mr. Chauvin was a public officer. He was a licensed peace officer in Minnesota. and he was performing his duties as a police officer at all times relevant. So without that indictment, Governor Walz lacks the authority to assign this case to the Attorney General's office. Now, of course, the Attorney General had no problem picking up that authority and abusing it, but that initial fundamental transfer of power was unlawful. So really, anything that flows from that is illegitimate and it's illegal. The complaint has to be dismissed in its entirety.
There are hackers out there that want nothing more than to cause damage and wreak havoc. There are hackers out there that are protecting.
As you point out in the...
I'll just say this, that there is a lot of shit that I do find, curious, right? I'll say it's some of this shit has really piqued my interest, because I can tell you like this, even when it came to the whole thing with amnesty, I studied that, right? We have to study, because I can tell you like this, I'm tired of being a low IQ voter, and I would rather know what is happening in my community and what the legislation is being passed, because even though some people don't want to pay attention, it doesn't affect your life. Politics involves damn near 90% of our lives, even if you don't want to pay attention to it, because it's paying attention to you.
The 14th Amendment in the U.S. Constitution, the Minnesota Constitution guarantees that no person shall be held to answer for a criminal offense without due process of law. And this petition argues that this is exactly what happened to Chauvin. And if it could happen to him, it could happen to any of us. And as you said in the petition, quote, the political fruits of this unlawful prosecution have shaped the trajectory of this state and the world. And that, quote, Hennepin County's unlawful charges against Mr. Chauvin were not severe enough for the mob. Walz referred the case to Keith Ellison, who signed and e-filed a second unfounded complaint against Derek Chauvin that included the murder charge. So along with illegal charges and a fraudulent trial that you've talked about, that you argue in this petition, it's even more troubling because it doesn't appear to be an isolated incident. What did you find there?
Right. This wasn't just done to Derek and to Tutau and Alex and Tom Lane. This was done to many, many law enforcement officials around Minnesota. Not only that, but the Attorney General's office under Ellison grew tenfold to expand the full-time criminal attorney division in order to spread this version of justice to the people in outstate Minnesota by assuming control, by Ellison's assumption of control of local prosecutions. You can see how the other law enforcement officials were treated in this case. The prospect of county attorneys in outstate Minnesota and the residents of those local jurisdictions being subjected to this abuse is frightening. And yet that's where we are today. So the court has the opportunity to do the right thing. They have the opportunity to be on the right side of history and fix this. And they need to do the right thing.
If not, I'm not sure what it would say for the...
You know, what's crazy to me is that when Amy Klobuchar was Hennepin County attorney, she used the grand juries 31 times. 31 times in her 8 years as Hennepin County attorney. Mike Freeman, he used the grand jury a lot too as well, but there was also times where he charged. So I want people to know that I don't think it was even Freeman. Let me take that back because I might be overstepping myself. But others have discharged and not used the grand jury. So again, people need to understand what's going on. I'll say this, people need to go pick up a book and read. You know, look at the statutes, look at the rules that they're talking about and get a better understanding of the law, because if nobody's coming to save us, nobody.
so-called justice system in the state and frankly elsewhere. But now that this petition, so this is Chauvin's third, has been filed, it could lead to an automatic dismissal of the state charges for your client. Ultimately, then all of the officers involved with George Floyd. What is the timeline here? What happens next? Here we are 6 years and so many people just waiting for some good news.
Timeline, we're going to have 45 days for the other side to file their response to this. And then after that, the judge will have a period of time, 90 days, to hand down an order and decide what he's going to do. I've asked for immediate dismissal. In the alternative, I've asked for an evidentiary hearing to flesh some of these things out, to find out who knew what at what time. But I want to address one other thing that you mentioned. Normally, when you file a successive petition for post-conviction relief, okay, you have a procedural bar that the state will assert against you. And the bar is really high. The bar is if you knew about a claim or if you should have known about a claim earlier and you didn't bring it in an earlier petition, that's grounds for dismissal. But what's unique about this case is that the due process violations were so severe that this is actually a structural error. So it's an error in the framework of the trial itself. So it's impossible to be able to gauge on appeal whether the evidence and issues litigated at trial were appropriate or not, because you have a problem with the rules of the game. And so that's why we're not facing that same procedural bar this time, and I expect it'll be litigated.
Rappers are literally sleeping on the fact that you can take.
It's hard to say if the grand jury was able to see things like the MRT, this trained police tactic, if they were able to see George Floyd's autopsy, if they were able to see the body camera footage that was kept from the public.
The part that they're not telling y'all is that they charged Derek because first-degree murder is premeditated. As long as there's life, I'll just say this, is that I guess in 90 days, around that time, even in 45. So I'll just leave it like that. You know, they can talk about the state, but they're still the federal. So I hope it does go back to trial so more transparency comes out and that a lot of this conspiracy theory talk is really not just conspiracy talk, and it's actual things that we can show in court, because right now none of that other shit even matters if you can't even put a lot of this shit in court. So
We don't know what they would have decided in the end, but that Derek, in many ways, he was just not given that.
Correct. And don't forget the toxicology reports. And the process is set up to allow grand jurors to inquire into those things. And so you have a filter on the front end to make sure that the charges, that unlawful political charges, never reach the jury, the petty jury in the first place. And then you have a filter on the other side, which is the petty jury, that have to agree that it's been proven beyond a reasonable doubt before you can have the conviction. That's the nature of the grand jury process. And it was abused.
Mm-hmm.
You recently spoke with Derek. How is he doing?
Derek is doing very well. Derek is, he's positive. He understands the situation. He's familiar with the arguments that I've presented in this petition today. He's optimistic. And Derek is tough. Derek's a fighter. He knows what happened to him, and he also knows we're going to fix it and make it right.
To keep up with the latest developments and to learn more about...
Like I said, I think they're giving out false hope. I don't know what else to say about it. You know, even not being a part of BLM, right? Wrong is wrong. Wrong is wrong. It doesn't matter who's doing it. Again, I'm going to say this. It doesn't matter who is doing it. Wrong is wrong. And I know people want to see Derek freed, there, I feel like we have such a division in America. Is like there's such a thin line. I remember the movie from Bobby Brown and Martin Lawrence, A Thin Line Between Love and Hate. Well, think about that thin line the same way here when it comes to Democrats and Republicans and right and wrong, because it's a thin line. So do what you want. I wanted to play this for a little bit, right? I wanted to show this, and I'm going to do a deeper dive on Friday because there's more to this story, right? Minneapolis has not done rental inspections for 30 plus years. So when you look at that 30, right, you go back 30 years is probably around the 90s, right? 94, 95, 96. Well, that's the same years Holloman happened. Holloman lawsuit, then the consent decree, and then they stopped doing it again. So there's too many people who do not know history and that's how history is repeating itself. So watch this, and I don't want people to be shocked, surprised, because this is how Minnesota is. This is how Minneapolis is. This is how St. Paul, Rochester. It's not about the people.
Thoughts and prayers are with them as well. Tough time. Now to a story you'll see only on Fox 9. The city of Minneapolis did not inspect a single public housing unit for nearly 30 years.
And that is all despite the city's own ordinance requiring it to do so. These revelations come from a pair of lawsuits from two tenants who say that they lived in those poor conditions. Fox 9's Mike Manzoni joining us now. And so, Mike, an appeals court says even after it put the city on notice years ago, it didn't change its ways.
And the court ruled in 2020 that the city must inspect public housing units just like it inspects private rental properties. Following that decision, the city did start inspecting them, but only after tenants called 311 to complain. The court noted that before then, the city refused to inspect MPHA properties and instead directed all complaints to the MPHA, that's the Public Housing Authority. Fast forward to last year, that is when the same court noted that, quote, beyond inspecting when an MPHA resident requests one, the city has not adjusted its inspection conduct related to MPHA rental dwellings, nor is there evidence that the city sought to amend the code in the 5 years since we decided. That's talking about that first case. The city claimed it did not have to inspect public housing because the ordinance did not apply to unlicensed rental units. And until recently, the Minneapolis Public Housing Authority did not have licenses for its more than 6,000 low-income homes. The Housing Authority argued that it risked losing federal funding if it obtained those licenses, but the appeals court ruled that both the city and the Public Housing Authority had it wrong. City code requires it to do the inspections, and the law requires the Housing Authority to obtain licenses for its rental units. We reached out to the Housing Authority, but it would not comment, citing ongoing litigation. When asked if it does its own inspections, it told us that staffers are routinely in those homes. Now, as for the city, it says after a change to state law that took effect last year, it started doing routine public housing inspections.
Yeah, I can say this because I remember when me and Robert called Red Wing because I was at that time, right? Robert was helping me with some things, and Red Wing when it came to rental properties. He came all the way to Red Wing, and we made a call to Housing Authority, the guy that does the inspections, and we asked certain questions, and they are. As long as you got money to play, money to pay, they're willing to play. And I think that's one of the biggest problems in Minnesota is that we have people who are driven by greed and could care less about people's well-being. And I think that's truly part of the problem. And one thing that I want to show before I get up out of here is Dearborn. This is going to be Minneapolis in 3 days on the 22nd when Jake Lang comes to Minneapolis. Is it going to be, I know it'll be crazy. And a lot of it is, I think that he's trying to get that kind of reaction because he knows how some people actually think or like feel. But I did watch this, and I'll tell you like this is that some of the shit is really wild and weird, and I really got to give it up to Ford Fisher because he always does put, good news out here and good things for people to see. And he's one of the independent journalists that I really do support. And that's news to share because he does really, really put a lot of good stuff out here. And I think people need to pay heed to that. So I'm going to show this. It's about 14 minutes long. But this happened yesterday in Dearborn. You had Nazis and Muslims and I guess what they call anti-fascist, whatever. There was a lot of flags out there and a lot of hate. I can definitely say that. There was a lot of hate. Because I don't feel like if it's not hate and you're trying to unite people, some of the words that these people use, it's not uniting, that's hate. You know what I'm saying? You're not, and people can call me racist, whatever. I just feel like every human deserves to be treated the same. We all deserve to be treated the same. Doesn't matter if people here are illegally, they still have rights. They're a human being. And I don't mean nothing but like American rights. I'm just saying rights and privileges of being a human being. So I don't think it's until the last couple of years that we really did care about people's status, people if they had visas or any of that shit, because when I was growing up, and especially when I started to notice it in high school, nobody asked about people's statuses. And that's where I learned of a lot of the things that, like, especially in the Somali community, that a lot of them, their birth dates were 1/1. And I was like, why do y'all all have January 1st as your birthday? Well, that's when you started to learn they didn't have records, not like we have in America. So that was kind of an eye-opening moment. Not that I really cared about people's statuses, but it was understanding that different countries do different things. And I mean, that's what third world, and I know it probably sounds bad when I say it, but there's some countries that don't have birth or marriage records. And the only thing that they do have is like from the hospital or when they come to America. So.
No, society's a polite society. I'm so pro 2A, I think every country should have a nuke. You're told to get back. Get back. Get back.
I'm not on the railing. Thank God
God for our veterans. Thank you for the sacrifices you made to serve this country for this freedom we have. God bless the veterans who are here. Thank you. Well, we're seeing my people be peaceful, but we're seeing an amazing amount of Muslims chant Ali Akbar in the middle of an American street, assault Americans just because their skin is white and their Lord is Jesus. These people cannot assimilate. They will not assimilate. They must go. Look at disgusting violent Muslims. America was founded for my people. I'll fuck your Jewish mother in the ass. America was founded for Christians and for white people. I'll fuck you up. I'll fuck you up. We will take our country back. The stone is rolled away. Muhammad is dead. Gandhi is dead. Joseph Smith is dead. We will stand against every single tongue that exalted itself above the Lord Jesus. Father, we know you're listening to our cries. Get this fucking pussy right here. What do you know? Fucking pussy. Get him because of what somebody's saying. Everybody's pointing at you. No, yo, mate. He coming with us. Come here.
Not so close to the camera, sir, because if someone hits you, it's going to hit somebody in front. Gentlemen, excuse me, please.
We're out here to make sure that people understand that Dearborn is all about love, no hate. We got a bunch of churches and mosques to put together, and I want to let you guys know that we love you guys no matter what is going on. We love you guys to the depths of our hearts. Jesus saves! Jewish Americans, stand with your Christian brothers. These Muslims hate you. They hate everything you stand for. Jewish Americans, vote for Mike Rogers in the upcoming U.S. Senate. Deport Abdul El-Sayed. The Iraqi Muslims are rapists. The Yemenis Muslims are rapists. Go back to your country. Go back to your country. Jaden, bring it here. Jaden. Jaden. Just go. You want to fight it? Just go. The high-headed tribe. Just go. Your leaders are homosexual Democrats. Swearon Mondani is a homosexual. No, he coming with us. Anybody doing violence, put him in cuffs. Excuse me, please. Anybody doing violence, put him in cuffs. Let me Not so close to the camera, sir, because if someone hits you, it's going to Jesus is king! Jake Lang is a Jew! 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 God bless our air! God bless our Tumas! God bless the IRGC! These Jews want to take over America! Fuck Israel! Fuck Israel! Fuck Israel! Fuck Israel! Let's go, brother! Let's go, baby! God bless Iran! God bless Iran!
What the fuck? Oh, wow.
Hey! Great job! You want to eat dinner at our house? What's that? You want to eat dinner at our house? We're going to be really busy after this. We got you, man. Have you guys got Will these guys get a flyer? Where you guys from? From downriver. These are all good guys right here. All good guys, yeah. Yeah, you too, brother. Let's go ahead. I am a doctor. Yes, Listen, you got no. Oh, I got it too. Hey, listen, you guys looking at it? No. Yeah, no, Jews, we're not trying to kill Jews. Yeah, Jews have a region. We're gonna kill all the Jews! They can go back to
Right.
One struggle! Hail Hamas! Hail Hezbollah! Hail the Houthis! Hail Iran! Down with Israel! Free Palestine! Hail Hitler!
Damn.
We don't support Jake Lang. Jake Lang is a Jew. We support Hitler. We support Nazis. We support one struggle between whites and Arabs against the Jew, the enemy of all mankind. Nadwa Wahid! Nadwa Wahid! One struggle! Free Palestine! Hail Hitler! Down with Israel! Fuck the Jews. Israel is the enemy of mankind. It's a nation built on lies. And Epstein was a Jew too. So was Gerald Fogel. Okay. Hey guys, my Muslim friend says he loves Jesus more than me. Hey, I love you too. Hey, we about to have a contest to see who loves Jesus the most. We're gonna see who loves Jesus the most. Look. Hey, check it out. Jesus is God. Bow the knee. Hell no. Bow the knee. Jesus is God. Wait, go back a little. Go back down. Yo. Jordan. I'll wash your feet. Yeah, he do. Give me water, I'll wash your feet. I'm gonna show you something. 1 second. Where's the Qibla? Hey, the Qibla is that way? You said who's God? Jesus is God. And you want me to bow down, you said? And worship him, Jesus. If you love him. I love him. I love Jesus. As a prophet. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is my God, and I'm going to bow down. The only God, the eternal God. Back! No one is Back! Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar. Jesus is God. Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar. Jesus is God! You ain't gonna do
You show them, motherfuckers. Yeah, he, Outsider. It's kind of weird.
So what is that about? I got ran over, and dirty cop let my murderer run free, and then the chief of police covered up my police report for 3 years so that I couldn't get any justice, and then the mayor, of course, helped them do it, and all charges were dropped, and nobody got charged with anything. And died 4 times, month in a coma, broke every bone in my body. And they just covered it all up. Judge Hammond, DA David Layton, Mayor Neely, and of course Chief Green, don't forget about him. Free Palestine, hail Hitler! Free Palestine, hail Hitler!
Mhm.
Get out of here, bro! Back up!
Motherfucker, let me out, man. Crazy. Minneapolis was definitely will be crazy on Saturday. Because you know Jake's coming with the end march. And that's the whole crazy thing, because I've seen all kind of posts on Facebook. I haven't really seen much on Twitter, but when you go to Threads and Instagram, you see people talking about meeting up, and so I don't know how it's going to go. I'll just say be safe, situational awareness. So somebody asked Grok, was I right? Is this true? Grok says yes, that is accurate. Minnesota Rule of Criminal Procedure 17.01 requires a grand jury indictment only for offenses punishable by life imprisonment, first-degree murder, all other felonies, including second-degree murder, third-degree murder, and manslaughter charges against Chauvin may be brought by complainant, which those charges were filed by complaint, consistent with long-standing law. I'm going to say that again. Long-standing law. This isn't new. So, I mean, that's the whole thing. I don't understand of like, how are y'all calling something out and it's not new? It didn't happen last year. Didn't happen there in the DFL trifecta. It's been a law for years, and now you guys are getting into outrage over something that has been here for a long time. Yeah, stop it. That's why I can't take none of these people serious. It's because it's like y'all have selective outrage. It's like, go to therapy, go get a therapist or something, because the way people be acting be crazy as hell sometimes. But I'm gonna get up out of here. I'll be back Friday. It's Wednesday. You know, they'll want to call it a hump day or whatever, but embrace where you live. Get out here and do mutual aid. Get out here and make sure that your neighbors are all right. You know, and that's the one thing that I feel like we have gotten so away from is communication with our community. And I think people need to know your neighbors, you know, because what if something happens, and because the police, 911, they're not coming to save us. So the more you get involved with your community, is community can be stronger. So here goes Hell No Anthem for those who refuse to quit. I'll be back Friday, same time, same place, and I'll see y'all then. Peace out.
They say keep your head down, don't make a sound. Stay in your lane, don't turn around. Take what you give and don't ask why. Watch your dreams fade and let them die. They said play it safe, don't take that road. Don't carry more than your share of the load. Don't chase the storm when the sky turns black. But I've never been good at holding back. Everyone sounds the same. Everybody's got a plan for me. Maybe you should go. Hell no. Maybe you should slow down. Hell no. Maybe you should back off, let it all go. They keep telling me which way to go. I hear them talking, but I already know. Hell no. Hell no. They counted every scar I'd earned, like every lesson should have burned.